So this may be the most difficult video that we record, and the reason why I say that is because we're talking about ourselves. Both me and Dr. Megan Vaughan, who you'll hear from here in a second, we get into a little bit more about our backgrounds. So I'll talk about my background, and then I thought it'd be important too to talk about how we even came about to this book project and these videos. So my name is Chris Thompson. Most people call me CT by my initials. And my background, I spent most of my time on active duty as a Green Beret. After my time in the military, I worked as a contractor, still deploying in support of another special operations unit. And then since then, I've been involved in the veteran nonprofit space. That's been one thing that's been continuous throughout after my time in the military and after contracting and all that. And that's been close to 12 or 13 years. But I've also been involved in several entrepreneurial efforts. And there's just some of the things that I do. But how I got involved with this whole book project is I met Dr. Megan Vaughan through she was doing some work for another veterans nonprofit that I also help out with, and just started meeting with her and she was helping me with a lot of cognitive function related things, and just a part of the natural progression of some of the things that we're working on. She had the idea of like, hey, it would be, kind of the next thing we can do is some memoir writing. And as we're going through that process, she's even mentioned that she's like, I could see you even turning this into a book if you wanted to, and potentially speaking on it at some point. And so that actually progressed into being actively working on this whole book project. And I will say, like, doing all of these recordings and everything, which again, all of this goes from video, audio into text form, and then, sometime down the road, it will eventually be available in book form. Really, what this is about is providing value for others, because I want this to be available as soon as possible, taking all of this and putting it into video form and making it available here on YouTube. No barrier to entry. It doesn't cost anything to be able to hear some of this stuff. And again, I hope people get value out of it. So, I'll give you a quick overview of my background. You're going to hear a ton from me with these videos, so I kept it pretty brief. But what I would like to do now is hand it over to Dr. Megan Vaughan and let her introduce herself, which I'm super thankful that she is helping out with this whole project, because after our first day of recording, it was a mountain of stuff, and I felt like I rambled on and it didn't make sense of the stories that I was telling, and maybe I thought they didn't have value. And if I was doing this by myself, that would have been the very end of this whole book project. But it made a lot of sense to her, and she could definitely see some value in it, and I'm very thankful for that, and thankful that we're able to continue going forward with this. So I'm going to hand it over to Megan and let her introduce herself. Thank you, guys.
All right. So hi, everyone. I am Dr. Megan Vaughan, and I am doing a video to introduce myself. I had asked Chris to do a video kind of delineating who he is, and then he's like, oh, you do one too. And so I kind of stuck my foot in it. So here I am. I've been thinking about how best to explain, my background and what I bring. And it got into this kind of this quandary of wanting to show, do I do the litany of the resume and the background, all these different pieces, versus like how much I care. And I do think how much someone cares matters a lot more than how much they know. But when I really started thinking about it, I realized that what I bring in my background here has to do with how much I care. So it's going to sound kind of roundabout when it all comes together, but I've been working with individuals within special operations for a little over a decade now. And my background has developed largely based off of the need. So when an individual would come to me, say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with, I'd be like, okay, let's figure it out. And I'd begin researching and developing and building out programs. And so my background is cognitive neuroscience and integrative medicine. But I began my career as a speech language pathologist, actually working in Hollywood with movie stars until my husband PCS'd to Fayetteville, North Carolina. And that's when I came across my first special operator. And what had happened is that individual had gotten in a motorcycle accident. I'm a brain injury specialist. And when he came to me, he had, the needs that you would see in someone with attention, memory, some of the, higher level planning, things like that, those sort of skills. And he got better really quickly. But there were some areas in memory that were kind of sticky and weren't exactly what I would have anticipated. So this is, 12 years ago, I would say at this point, if not more, I have to look. But basically, this is when I first went and I looked into the concept of mindfulness. And this wasn't something that was super mainstream yet in medicine, especially in brain injury. It just wasn't really on the idea of with rehab in that capacity. And I had begun looking into this because of the interest within memory. So that became when I started entering into the cognitive neuroscience world. And then from there, worked at one of the intensive centers within Veterans Affairs, working with special operations, active duty. Completed my doctorate, developed out a nationwide program for special operations for emotional intelligence, increasing the capacity for making connections with others, including loved ones, and the ability to create endeavors outside of the military for work. But that's, I guess, shows where some of the other caveats of what I do come in, and of course then sleep came up as one of the bigger needs. So then I developed a program for working with sleep disordered breathing and obstructive sleep apnea and snoring, and looking at the tactical breathing needs for special operators and how to improve all of those physiological functions and the improvement that would have in life. And when I say all these things, it just sounds so, I don't know, clinical, and doesn't really show who I am and the passion and level of what I am trying to bring. And it's partly because I want to be able to be in the background and help facilitate the ability to share a story, but also to share a story that's going to have an impact on so many others, and just the absolute beauty and blessing that can be to a generation and generations to come. So as I said, I tend to evolve along with the needs. So I also now work in psychedelics integration. That's another area, biofeedback, and have also begun working with special operations spouses and teenagers in some of the resilience skills. But here my goal really is to be able to help bring about this really important message and story that Chris has to share. And I think it has gonna have a lot of impact on individuals who may be struggling along a same path that he has gone along. But I also think it's going to bring a lot of light and awareness to clinicians. It's a privilege to be able to be here and doing this work, and I think it's a privilege for any of us who get to hear this, to hear these stories, and because otherwise you're left with this checkbox of, okay, we've got some memory and attention or whatever. I'm not talking about Chris, I'm saying in general, this checkbox way of doing things versus this whole human that's in front of us, and being able to hear these stories and to see almost behind the curtain, if you will. So I don't know, it's funny to explain my piece in it, but I really am looking forward to this journey and all of the empowerment that I think it can bring from individuals from both sides of the table, whether it be the clinician or the client. And I think at some point the table just needs to go away and we engage with each other as two humans on this life journey together. And and that is the true power, I think, of healing. And and sharing of the knowledge. And I think it can be hard when there's such a strong tendency towards the quiet professional, which is definitely a very important thing. But there's so much wisdom that can be shared, and that's the goal, and something I am really looking forward to having all of you be able to participate with us in.